today's episode, Entertainment plus Web3, episode 2 of our course called The Future plus Web3. This episode is powered by Nftyplay, who we're very, very grateful to, part of Startup September, which I know you all are aware of, and the hashtags, going crazy on Twitter and so on and so forth. Like I said, since entertainment is a more umbrella term than, say, something very specific like music, right? This is going to be a more abstract session in terms of the concepts we must cover. In the previous episode, I had also opened with a keyword, right? And that keyword had been context. This time I'm bringing another one, and I'm really, really interested in this word in general. And I will revert back to it throughout this episode and the next coming ones as well, right? And today's keyword is evolution. Whether you want to look at Web3 itself, the word, as essentially saying, hey, the internet itself is evolving, or whether you want to look back at the music episode and see that each thing was either a hardware-based evolution or a software-based evolution, and then distribution changes because of it, and so on and so forth, right? So evolution is a key piece, a key lens to view all of the content we're creating through, and with entertainment, again, the story stays pretty much the same. Technology changes business models, and that, affects consumer behavior, and that creates new pockets of opportunity, new problems, new pain points. But the conversation is more abstract this time, like I said, as compared to music. There's two terms that I'm kind of coining here that are a little interesting and that can anchor and contextualize a conversation very well. The first one I'm going to call the physical digital paradox. Now, what do I mean by this? Think about filing cabinet. They're a forgotten remnant now, right? But say even 20 years ago, everything everywhere would work off of actual physical files and folders where people would physically write down information, and they would be stored in these rooms, right? And obviously for us today, that's an absurd notion to think about. But so that's clearly something. Files and note-taking or information storage went from the physical realm to the digital realm, right? And there was a period of recalibration, and now it's firmly in the digital. So this happens to a lot of things, actually. And why I'm calling it a paradox is it mostly, when it's happening, looks like there's a tug of war. There's a constant tug of war. But if you give it enough space and time, you will see that mostly the digital wins. And not only that, but things don't generally return from the digital unless they're like in niche collectors categories, right? So again, going back to the first episode, once streaming started in music, right? LPs are still there and CDs are still there for collectors, and that's great. But they become a niche thing. And the business at large definitely stays digital from then, like that point forward, right? So the example of the physical digital paradox where digital wins is basically everything ever. That's why I've kind of, not given more concrete sort of examples over there. But I think filing cabinets is a good one. The second term that's going to be anchoring our conversation today is the product attention monopoly. Now, I've tried to compress a lot of ideas that I had into this one phrase. It's dense, the product attention monopoly. What do I mean by this? And it's going to be a bit of a leap, so forgive me if it doesn't connect perfectly, but I promise I'll tie it together in the end. What I mean is, in our current paradigm, we're very used to assuming that we can create whatever we want online, right? You can just go create a tweet. You can tweet about anything you want, and same on Facebook, same on Instagram, right? You just open your phone and start. But there was an era before this where you would only be able to be a published writer if a publisher chose you, commissioned you. Then you would write a book. It would have to be a certain length. They would control everything, and then you would be able to push it out, right? So this is going to come more heavily into the talk in a bit. But let's say that creation was very much centralized and in somebody else's control. This is not true in the current paradigm. We already have pretty much open creation. But, and this is why the word monopoly, the thing you create, if it's a tweet, is stored on Twitter servers. If it's an Insta post, it's with Instagram. So as long as it's on their servers, it's in their control. They can they can censor it, they can remove it, they can tailor the algorithm to show certain things more than the others, right? I'm not going to obviously go into political stuff, but this has massive ramifications beyond, say, individual artists and so on and so forth, right? So that's one piece of the product attention monopoly, is that since you're creating on my server, since what you create is being stored on my server, I de facto have control over it. The other funny thing about Web2, with a company like Facebook or Twitter, really, right, is that you're coming in, creating the content, and you're also the viewership. You're also consuming the content. So you're the creator as well as the distributor as well as the consumer, and yet none of the value captured is coming to you at all. It's a really remarkable place to be in history. And the Web3 bet is that this is not going to stand the test of time as a paradigm. And it's very quickly going to change into a point where, so we're already creating, distributing, and consuming for these companies. We must see some companies come up that give a share of that value captured back to these people who are not just passive users, but creators as well as distributors. So that's kind of the product attention monopoly. This is what Web2 companies like Facebook have thrived off of. But the bet we're going to make here, the thesis we're going to create here over the next hour or so, is that it's probably going to change now. This is just an interesting poster of a movie that I like because of the book that I really love, right? Kind of about the monopoly we just spoke about. The power to destroy a thing is the absolute control over it. It's a quote from the book and movie Dune. And it again goes back to the fact that if data is being stored on somebody's server, then they de facto have control over it. And while that may be how we assume things are always going to be, that's just how they are right now at this moment in time. So let's move forward. Entertainment, very abstract. Let's try and bring it to some key terms, and we'll take it from there. Okay. So let's say that there are 4 pieces here, really 3 pieces, and then one kind of ignored piece to the side, funnily enough, right? Scale is somewhere on the side, like it made a mistake. Creation, ownership, and distribution. So like I said just now when we were talking about Twitter and Facebook, I'm coming in, putting my data in and creating. So that's social media. It's user-generated media. But the ownership is in the hands of the platform. So that's important. And then distribution, they have a chokehold over as well, which is why the paradigm is how it is. But these are the terms. We're going to look into it a little bit. And then scale, we're going to try and map that many places and create some mini theses out of it, let's say, right? So let's move to the next slide. We're going to first demystify these terms that we just saw: creation, ownership, and distribution. Creation, Shakespeare is the OG creator to me because I'm a writer and because I have a bit of a theory that, I'll get into a little bit. So this is William Shakespeare. The Brits obviously consider him the greatest of all time. A lot of people do. If you have any classical literary education whatsoever, this guy is undeniable and inescapable, right? Most of that is generally attributed to quality. The reason I'm bringing up here is not that. The reason I'm bringing him up here is this guy had like 30 plays that were all amazing at an era when you couldn't even publish plays. So something to me says it's probably a volume game as well with him, in the sense that he was perhaps the only playwright that scaled creation. He didn't just have one play that did very, very well. He had 10 at a time. And so maybe somebody wrote a play that was much better than any Shakespeare play, but they didn't write 10 of them. And so history kind of forgot them over time because he wrote like 30 of them, right? So we see that some things, even on the creation side, which is where you would argue that scale should matter least, right? Because it's the most qualitative. Shakespeare stands as an argument against that and saying that scale can overwhelm even qualitative factors. Scale can overwhelm pretty much anything. And this goes back to our digital physical paradox, because the digital allows you to scale much faster than anything in the physical world, right? We're going to get to another person and another example via the distribution model, where we'll again return to the physical issues, the limitations of the physical world, let's say. So another term to demystify: distribution, right? Let's look at the most famous actress of all time. Let's see if everybody can guess this, okay? My bet is you can't guess this. This is Sarah Bernhardt. I remember a few years ago, actually, I remember reading her biography. So this was a French lady who was the most famous actress of her time. I mean, really worshipped like a god in France at that point. It's a very fascinating story. I encourage you to go and look it up if you're interested in that kind of thing. But the reason I bring her here is distribution. She owned it, right? She was in every single theatrical production at that time. And this is a time when it's still just theaters in France, right? Which speaks to my point, is that's why we haven't ever heard of her. So very well known, but the physical world is only not just France, right? So she toured from France to the US, but that was the end of it. And today, in an era, and we're going to come to that next, when we assume Netflix is the way to live, right? We forget that the height of popularity didn't really mean global popularity ever till a decade ago, right? So distributions ends when it was just a physical thing. Entertainment were pretty much geographically limited. And this is something that I bring up only to highlight the fact that we assume it's not the case. We're just so used to our times and our opulence of information, let's call it, right, that we forget this is the case. But this is one example of when entertainment moves from the physical realm to the digital realm. Suddenly the world's hit movie, say the Avengers or something like that, becomes the hit movie everywhere, right? So I'm currently watching Squid Games on Netflix, and that's a show made in South Korea that's dubbed, but Netflix picks it up and suddenly it goes all over the world. And now I'm watching it in India, right? So there's a lot of cultural cross-pollination and that kind of thing. And then there's also the tail end curve. So there's many ways of looking at it if you look at it from a distribution perspective or a culture mixing perspective. But one thing is very clear, that when something goes digital from physical, the outward bound of exactly where it can go maxes out to the limit until the digital itself improves, which is what we're talking about with Web3, right? So let's move forward. We already mentioned this. Netflix versus YouTube versus a bunch of question marks. This is after this section, I'm going to bring in one of our speakers to hop in with his opinion, because I'm really interested in hearing it. But the difference that I want to highlight here between Netflix and YouTube, right? So, okay, there's the physical digital conundrum, and we've gone digital. So all of this video content is now digital. Cool. But you can't upload stuff to Netflix, right? Netflix very much still owns that part, controls that part. YouTube, you can upload anything. They can remove it, censor it, yada, yada, yada. But at least you can upload anything. So there's a difference between Netflix and YouTube as businesses. YouTube is more properly called social, let us call it, right? Whereas Netflix is more really like the digitization of the movie theater, right? Hence the name Netflix, pretty much. Now the question is, but on YouTube, it's still on their servers, in their control, and all of, more importantly to me, at least as creator, right? All of the value accrued is going to them by default, and then they're setting the deal on whether they want to give you 10% or 15% or whatever it is, right? So we saw from centralized creation, something like Netflix where you can't create, to not exactly decentralized creation, but say open creation, something like YouTube where you can upload everything, but the value capture is for them and the rights are with them. What happens in the future? Do we see something where I can post whatever I want and also control the deal that we form? Possibly, because it's not on their server. That's kind of the germ of our thesis here. We're going to create two. So let's move to that. But till now, hopefully it's been, fun and made sense. And I haven't introed any of our speakers as usual because I want to set context for the course very well, right? But I have a very interesting person here called Sugnesh, who is the CEO at Nftyplay, who is one of our theses as well, which is why I invited them, right? But at this point, if I can get Sugnesh to come in, dude, I mean, when we talk about your project, obviously we'll get into it a lot deeper, right? But I feel like you are one of the people who sees most clearly where this macro digitization of content and the gradual decentralization of it is going, Netflix versus YouTube versus the question mark. If you could speak to me on the question mark, I would really love it.
Well, the question mark is absolutely going to be the decentralized protocols and the applications that are being built upon those protocols. So if you look at like the newer protocols that are supporting more decentralized file storage, for example, IPFS, Pinata, other file storage systems, where you cannot just remove something with a centralized authority and you store it on chain forever.
Right.
Our protocols that are developed are helping sustain these infrastructure ecosystems and become the front end of that and give power to the users back. Where if you look at these platforms, they're all basically post to earn, right? But users are posting and the companies are earning, right?
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
want to, or what we focus on with our post to earn or the mechanism we create on Nftyplay is we give you post to earn, but you are the user, you post and you earn. Rather than just as company, we take the earnings from your content and the creation away from you. We do have to sustain and we have an ecosystem fee within this, but it's not that we are just going to keep 100% of your content creation or whatever you're creating and deprive you of that. So that is the thesis which is going to go long term. It's decentralization that's pushing or giving people the power back towards what the post to earn mechanism we are already living in, but the centralized authorities are the biggest beneficiaries over here.
I love it. I love it. So this plays very, very well with the two theses I have here. But just to sum up what Sugnesh is basically trying to say, the irony of this is two things already exist. The paradigm where the user is also the creator as well as the consumer as well as the distributor, right? That's social media. The only key difference is that all of the value accrues in the Facebook stock instead of something else that's publicly distributed, right? The second thing that also already exists, ironically enough, is the decentralized backbone of not having to store that information on Facebook's server would then take away that de facto control they have over it, and the kind of dubious debate they can create that it's their intellectual property because it's on their servers, right? I mean, that's literally like kind of saying if I wrote a book physically, right, and I handed it to you and you kept it in your drawer, does it become your book, right? It's a funny, silly comment to make, but anyhow, um, let's return to the two. So this is a little different from last time. Last time we took two tech breakthroughs and tried to open that into seeing how the space would open up. Like I said, it's harder to do that with entertainment since it's so broad a category. So let's do it differently. Let's say what happens on the micro and what happens on the macro, right? The micro is actually pretty easy to understand. The 0 to 1 Peter Thiel kind of thing only works on the macro where you upturn entirely current models, right? But if you wanted something very short term, not to say short term, but to have success immediately, right? That would basically be take the current model, add one technical breakthrough, and rapidly improve something for everybody involved, right? So if you help current models on the micro, those are the projects that would immediately have success, which is, as we all know in Web3, adoption is supposed to be the holy grail, right? And one piece of adoption is definitely to, instead of everybody trying to create a 0 to 1 macro upturn project, if some people try and see how current business models can be benefited via this technology stack that we now have, maybe that's a good thesis to have. So that's the micro side. And I have a very interesting speaker coming in for that as well, of course. On the macro side is Sugnesh, upturn current models. That would basically be the gradual decentralization of everything that you do, but we'll get into that. So thesis one, the macro. Like I said, you open up your Twitter account, you upload stuff there. It's your personality, your content. An algorithm is picking who sees your content. That algorithm is not in your control, first of all. Secondly, all of the content you've created is literally on their server, which means it's like not yours, really, technically speaking. So you don't own it. And they have a chokehold on the distribution, which means you can't quite generate value for yourself outside of Twitter using your Twitter profile, which is a very frustrating thing uh, but it's also, I think, only a stepping stone to where things are going. Because if you think about Web 1 for a minute, then suddenly this doesn't look that dystopian. It actually looks quite like it looks like a normal growth curve, where in Web 1 you could only consume content. You could just Google things, they would come up and you could see them. Or if Web 1, the revolution was all of the content in the world became accessible to you to consume to begin with. That was the first big deal, right? Web 2, you can now even create content with the same open access principle. So, seen in that context, and like I said initially, right, for you to be able to publish anything, you would need a publisher. For you to be able to paint, right? So even Da Vinci had to beg, borrow, and plead to get people to commission paintings, and the Mona Lisa was only painted because somebody commissioned it. I think that's I often think about that actually. So, seen from that growth arc's perspective, we're actually in a pretty good place. It's just that the next step of the arc is quite predictable. You can see that, well, consumption itself was for the very few earlier, right? We saw this in music. There was vinyls and LPs, and then radio came in, and suddenly a lot of people could listen, right? So gradually things get decentralized, by which we mean more people get access to them. In a very rough way, that's what we mean. So in terms of consumption, that happened. Then in terms of creation, that happened. Now with Web3, we're talking about in terms of ownership, that happened. So that would technically require some pieces, one of which would be that the information created digitally should not be on a server owned or created or rented or hired by somebody, but instead a public, now you'll see where I'm coming to, right? A public file storage place that's not technically owned by anybody, right? But where I can show that this thing is and distribute it anywhere I want from there. So that's the first macro thesis we have here, is the gradual decentralization of everything digital. Wave 1 was consuming, wave 2 was creating, and now the next wave is going to be owning it. Distribution is always changing, so it's very hard to map. One day it's TikTok, one day it's something else, right? But the key piece that we're talking about here is who owns that content to begin with, right? Owning content and distribution have been by default latched together in our worldview because we've only seen Facebook and Web 2 basically. That doesn't really have to be the case. And so essentially what happens with something called blockchain, right, is that ownership and distribution, that initial, if we go all the way back to the slide where we said the product attention monopoly, this breaks because the product and people's attentions now change, like they break that paradigm of it's all stored on our server, so it's in our control and we have the viewers. This breaks. So that's the key change, okay, that happens. And this is our first thesis. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Wow. Super technical today. The second thesis is actually a lot more, I think, easy to grasp for most people. Say some business is already running. One format of entertainment is already there. All I have to do is add one instant, undeniable value add, and suddenly I have a successful product. So where can this be applied is really a matter of imagination. I'll give you one example. And let's move to the next couple of slides and then I'll bring that example up. But basically, I'm saying here, NFT that. What I mean is, wherever an NFT can instantly, undeniably add value, just create NFTs there and you'll see rapid growth in my thesis. So how might this change my experience and the business model? A couple of visions on this, right? So going back to macro, let's think about the fact that people are either called influencers or digital content creators. They're not exactly understood to be digital content owners because they don't own their content, right? And influence is a very angular, almost passive aggressive word, where it's like, well, you're an influencer on a platform, so how much influence might you really have if the platform can remove you at any moment, true digital artists could be born in a decentralized paradigm, by which I mean not just creators, but creators as well as business owners of the business that is their art. So an artist here, that's why I've italicized it. By that, I mean somebody who owns the entire process front to end and knows what they want to do with it, which is the case with most artists anyway. It's just that business models currently don't really allow for that, right? So true digital artists will hopefully, and I think, start to come up where everybody owns a distribution arm via their YouTube channel. Everybody owns a distribution arm via their Twitter, but the thing that they're making is in their hands and they're selling it, and part of that is NFTs, part of that is other stuff as well. But this does become very, very possible now that the product attention monopoly gets broken because of Web3. Depublishing. So for all of my friends who are not very Web3 folk, one trend in Web3 is to just call everything D something. So D here means decentralized, and what I mean is decentralized publishing in the sense that, like I said, it's just a term I'm coming up with to signify the fact that not only will you be able to create content permissionlessly that you can already do on, say, a Twitter, right? But on Twitter, it's not exactly permissionless, because when you sign up, there's a little document that you've actually signed by default. And so you're in a contract with them already, and that contract is written by them and agreed by you because it's their platform, and so on and so forth. So we've spoken on this, but decentralized publishing would mean truly permissionless publishing, which means to say I can mint an NFT on Ethereum like without asking anybody or anything, right? That's decentralized publishing. Now we come to the micro side of it, digital memorabilia. We spoke about this a little bit in music as well, but with this episode, I have another story about this. So DDLJ, right, is an iconic movie in India, really across the world, because the Indian movie industry obviously is massive, right? But can you imagine any of our parents who went and like saw DDLJ having the actual ticket stub of that still? And say, I don't know, the 25th anniversary of that comes out, or the first Bond movie, it's like the 100th anniversary of the first Bond movie or something like that. Do you think if somebody had a ticket stub of that, there would be some value to it as memorabilia? I think yes. And it's interesting to me because that's not really an industry, right? There's a lot of collectible industries, like in music, there's vinyl collections and CD collections. But we know there's a lot of moviegoers. It's a massive business. And there doesn't seem to be a bunch of memorabilia related products that I can off the cuff think of, So if we go back to my micro thesis, where is an instant undeniable value add? This might be one, where it can be a digital ticket. And in that way, it would get stored, and that way it would be easy to transfer back and forth. And like we've seen before, the digital side generally wins anyway, So NFTs make it possible to create digital memorabilia, and a DDLJ ticket would probably have value, which means any movie right now that you think might be a DDLJ, that ticket as an NFT would probably be something interesting, So that's my second micro thesis. We'll come back to it because one of our speakers, like last episode, is making exactly that. But let's first speak on the macro. So this episode, like I said initially, right, is powered by Nftyplay. They're a platform that I really respect, and their founder is actually somebody that I really respect. He's been a mentor for me for some time now. Sugnesh, thanks so much for joining today, dude. I'll just open it up to this slide for you that I like whipped up from LinkedIn. So very interesting background again. One thing I'll say, just as a sidebar to all of my viewers here, right, is in Web3, you'll generally see founders or investors or whoever have very interesting backgrounds because there isn't a degree in Web3 yet, right? There isn't a formal way of getting into this space, which means when you enter this space, you have people who've done, for example, like Sugnesh, right? It's computer science, then it's banking, then it's consulting, right? I'm somebody who's like been a novelist and a founder normally, and then here, right? So it's a really intellectually engaging space because of the variety of people that come in. So again, as you can imagine, computer science as well as banking as well as consulting, interesting bunch of experiences to have had. I know him as basically an OG in crypto, long time. He just knows whatever is next in the space. That's at least how I see it. And I think that's what the project Niftyplay really represents as well, right? But I think you see the NFT vision as far as when actual utility hits with NFTs as a thing that's come up, right? I think you see that vision very well. And that's what you're kind of building at Niftyplay. So I'll give you the floor now. Please tell us anything you think so far about what I have yapped, where you think things are headed, and about Niftyplay, of course, as well.
Yes. So let me start by a little bit about me. I went to Kane University. I was born in India and came here when I was like 17. And then I went to school over here, and then I went to college over here. I did my computer science. And then I got a job at first with TCS, and then I switched over to Citi, American Insurance Group, and a few big corps. And I was working as a QA automation engineer. Then I developed UI as well. I worked as a technical project manager. So different roles within a Scrum team, like corporate teams, and delivering tech, like front end applications related to consumers, like the Citi banking mobile app that you use on your phone. Our teams used to work on those apps. So when we were working in New York, 2016, 2017, the first or the second cycle, some would say, would take off of crypto. And there would be a lot of blockchain meetups in New York. And we would go and meet each other, discover new protocols. A lot of ICOs were coming at that time as well. So that's how we got into crypto and blockchain and discovering new protocols. And when we were able to get into some of the new protocols early on, it was really good times, make good networks and connections. And then after a little while, we started to look at the space more closely in order to understand that how we can solve problems that are not being resolved in Web2 or traditional centralized world and help the ecosystem. And that's how we started supporting new projects, even invested in some of the angel rounds, and, then went ahead and started to discover new things and put our minds to what is new and what's something that we could focus on and how we could help for decentralization aspect of the Web3 to get more mainstreamed. So when we were looking at usage of a lot of social networks and how they have been working overall, the huge problem, as I said, is that centralization and users are actually being controlled by these big corps. Just forget about the way that they're being fed the data. That's one. But the concern about making revenue off users 100% of the time, and potentially not even 10% returns are even given back to the users directly, is something that triggered me all the time. And as our screen time went on, and the NFTs were coming up, we figured that this would be the best way where we could create a protocol or a platform where we give users power to create their profiles, and they take control of the profile by creating NFTs or monetizing their content or whatever content that they have posted on their centralized platforms. They can push it to our platform, convert it to NFTs, or create NFTs for their own collections and have a direct community which they can monetize on a platform without any intermediaries. And that's how we came up with Nftyplay, where we gave our first feature that is live, where you can directly convert your content and put it as NFT on Polygon. And then let's say you're a photographer, you're an artist, or you are a content creator of a special kind and you want to promote your niche. You put a set of NFTs that you can monetize and limit the size of those NFTs and have your community help you out in a way where we are not being an intermediary. We are just letting you put your content on blockchain. It's being stored on, let's say, Pinata, and someone just asked a question in Q&A which says that, okay, there's so much data on Facebook, it's in terabytes, it says, how do you expect Web3 or everyone to store the data? So usually that question I would answer right here, that not users are storing the data. Data is being stored on storage systems, but these storage systems are decentralized and they're able to handle big capacity. So let's say that we can't think of IPFS putting or storing or handling a huge chunk of data in terabytes or thousands of terabytes or whatever data is being processed on Facebook. But different companies like, Pinata, there is Siri coming out with similar options too. They have given access to store data in a decentralized manner where once it's posted, even RV, if you have heard about RV, you post or push data on chain, you get as a front end protocol. What we are working on is that when we say that we are giving you the power back, we just don't want to censor content or centralizedly remove anything that someone is posting, even if it is something wrong or being reported 100 times. But we are creating a process which creates decentralized censorship governance, where
Yeah.
you as a user could actually vote on chain for something that is being reported by, let's say, 1,000 users, and select to blur that. And the
Yeah.
power is in the hands of the community rather than we taking a call saying that, okay, this is what we want to show on our platform, this is not what we want to show. So
Exactly. This is,
it's
yeah, I'm sorry. I thought this is exactly where I align, and I want to go deeper a little bit here. It was an
yeah,
interesting question. I'll bring back that word evolution again, because
yeah,
as far as that file storage piece of it is concerned, right? One of the debates I think that people always have, and this is a good day to be discussing that, right? The day of the merge as well, is that people tend to generally assume that the decentralized option for anything is probably not going to be as efficient, but it's only a matter of time and evolution, and then that thing will take, like, it'll leapfrog those earlier modes regardless. So there's like 3 projects working on decentralized storage now. There was like one a few years ago, and then let's say in the next 5 years there's going to be 100. So some of them will figure it the hell out, right? The interesting mode to me that's already happened when it comes to web companies is, like, I loved when you used that phrase, as a front end protocol. People have already begun to figure out the fact that the infra layer of Web3 is probably going to be separate, let's call it, from the front end protocols. So some people are going to work on the decentralized storage bit, the decentralized retrieval bit. God knows there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of projects working on infra level stuff. But then there's also this understanding that for the user experience to be very good, the UX still needs to be top notch. So some protocols have to be optimized and focused on that, which is where Nftyplay stands, right? And because of this separation of the two, de facto, that idea of having authority over what happens on this platform because we built it from scratch and it's our thing, right? That goes away. One of the things that had been interesting when the Twitter debate was happening, when Elon was trying to take over, right, was, is this not a human right at this point? And I don't think the answer, it's regardless of who owns a centralized platform. As long as it's owned by people, I think this issue is going to keep coming up. So I'd love to hear more on that side of things, right? Like you said, maybe the community can vote on the censorship problem of it. Maybe, so obviously tokens come in and voting comes in and DAOs come in. So a lot of that, the actual value of governance tokens, right, I think has not even been, we haven't even scratched the surface of that yet, because these protocols, when they kick that adoption tipping point over, then we'll realize just how much that matters, I think, right? What do you think?
I agree. And right now, as you said, that a lot of infrastructure plays are being promoted very hard on, especially overall blockchain whole ecosystem, where users are directly so tied emotionally with what protocols they're supporting. So if you were a Web2 user, you're not going to show Amazon Web Services or a Google Cloud fan. You don't carry a banner that, Shashwat Google Cloud, right? But what's happening here is that people's emotions are tied into these backend protocols because they are carrying tokens and the bags are heavy, right? It's one of the terms. Now, As time passes, eventually there's just going to be so many different layers of backends resolving these issues as just a backend should be that no one talks about it. And when this happens, the front end layers are the one who are going to be using these technologies in real time rather than just the token holders who are like, okay, we love it because of the prices going up, XYZ, right? So focus here is to create a good user experience and a protocol that lets users give mainly the power back and have their right to post openly without being censored. If we could say forever, or as long as we are able to sustain the protocol and there's a good community and vibing ecosystem around it, and that's always been the idea. So for us to grow into this ecosystem and for users to come in and adopt this, we're going to have to just continue to build and be around for a long time until everyone comes to a realization that, okay, the platforms that we are actually currently using are and if you look at in a way where other platforms that are like very centralized, I've noticed that even Twitter is kind of exploring where they're letting users put in NFTs, or even Facebook is trying to integrate Polygon and Instagram, and there you can display your digital artwork in some of the regions which is live already. They're exploring into these things too. But the problem with them is that their ecosystems are already too big that it's very difficult for them to pivot to something. Even if they want to go completely decentralized, it's just going to be enormous and a big move for them. So what we are doing is we are giving users a fresh platform where they could create something and have control over it, and continue to use it as long as they want it for, without any restrictions or someone trying to manipulate or censor their opinions, and have any juice out of what they're building directly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually, the experiments with NFTs that everybody's doing, right? I think personally, Twitter going decentralized would be an incredible thing for the world. But the issue is that being just realists, right, and realizing that, well, incentives run everything. Especially as Web3 people, we understand this, right? It's essentially about incentive design. The incentives are just like, it's an already invested in company. They've got investors, rounds and rounds have happened. So there's a lot of other stuff that stops it from turning on a dime and saying, hey, ideologically, this is the right thing to do and it'll be amazing for the world, so let's do it, right? It's sadly not as simple as all that. With Facebook, I'm a little more wary, to be honest, in the sense that their rebrand to Meta is very much top of mind for a lot of us in the space, in terms of the thesis of a walled garden metaverse and so forth, right? But regardless, I do appreciate the grandiosity of the vision, because like you said, the infra layers have to come into place. People as a whole have to begin to understand why this thing being open and permissionless is kind of almost a human right at this point, but I think my macro bet would be that's very much the direction we're headed in, Yeah. And I also, so two things from you. First of all, is there any new thing about Nftyplay right now that you would like to share? Something that, say, somebody watching here is like, hey, this sounds like an interesting company. What can I look at next? Like, would that be them just trying the platform out? Would that be them following the Twitter? Where do you think they should go?
They could go on nftyplay.io and create a profile and start using the platform, converting the content that they have to NFTs on Polygon already. That feature is live. And what we are coming up with, as I said, a post to earn model, where we already have had a rewards token that we launched last year, and we want to take it, make it utilize to its max. So we are going to have the post to earn, where users are creating content, doing certain activities on the platform, earning experience points, and based off of that, they can start earning the post to earn model and the rewards in the ecosystem. Now, if you ask at how we can sustain this, or it's just not sustainable, we have revenue from
Mhm.
ads or whoever is supporting just the same way any social platform makes revenue. We have a revenue. That revenue is being used to sustain the ecosystem and redistribute back to the users. Post to earn basically gives the same concept of all the socials, but as I said, you post and they earn. We are trying to give
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
you earn model. And except for that, we are also focusing on learn to earn mechanism, where we want to put out, like, as we are a social and we see a lot of traffic coming on our website and users trying to understand what our platform is, we want to also take opportunity for these users to learn more about Web3. So we are creating a learn to earn model where I think you could really fit in really well, because you do a lot of learning stuff good, right? So you want to come in and start showing or creating short guides for users to get accustomed to Web3,
Right.
kick in, start using new protocols, what they do, create short books or guides for users to, like, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is what you need to do to get into the ecosystem. And we want to create that model and put a learn to earn model where users are creating certain tasks. They're actually learning, taking a small test, and then they can actually move forward within the ecosystem and our protocol. That's our focus right now.
Sounds
Adoption of
awesome.
Web2 coming into Web3, and then helping them learn for where they're going to be headed in Web3 and how their journey evolves.
Love it, love it. I actually, think even before we get to the post to earn and the learn to earn, the bit that you mentioned about right now, the first feature that Niftyplay decided to make live, to me, that's very interesting because that plays in with our micro thesis very well, where it's like, well, what's the current paradigm? How can I instantaneously add value to, in this case, the value is not coming to the user. So how can I add value to the user right away? So they can bring in their tweets, they can bring in their Instagram posts and convert them into NFTs and get value right away, right? So that's super interesting and gives me the perfect segue to introduce my second speaker and my second thesis, right? The micro. Mr. Nishant Chandra, please turn your video on. I'll give you a little intro and the project a little intro. Give me a couple of minutes and then we can dive into Blocktickets, right? So I am a huge fan of this kind of project, believe it or not, because you're not doing a token raise. You're not interested in that side of the business at all. Instead, what I see you doing a lot, right, in Bangalore, in Delhi, in Dubai, is actually doing business development and having concert after concert after concert. So most recently these guys, so okay, let's back up a little. Blocktickets is taking our thesis of, say, legacy entertainment companies. How can they be shown an instant undeniable value add using some of the new technology stacks that we have, predominantly here NFTs, right? And like I said with the DDLJ story, right, tickets is a very good example of that, actually. And that's what Blocktickets literally does, right? So that's why they're called Blocktickets. Nishant's background, again, very interesting. Banking plus startups, now Web3. He's a solid business development guy. I've seen him hustling, like I said, across many cities now in the past few months. It's been very impressive to watch you guys grow, man. You're basically taking ticketing forward, and I think it's one of those bona fide, undeniable cases for adoption of the tech itself, because there's an instant undeniable value add, which is what you're creating with Blocktickets. Floor is yours. Please, any context you want to share about everything we discussed so far. I know you have strong opinions about not forcing the earlier business model to change too much for you, but to meet them halfway and that way have rapid success, right? And I think that's very interesting for everybody to listen to, instead of everything being will upturn everything and disruption being the keyword, right? I think that's what I really find interesting in Blocktickets. Would love some insight on that.
Hi, Shashwat. I turned my screen off because not that I'm too good to look at, but it's. I thought I'll be, anyway, I was going second. So, so entertainment is one very fascinating factor, and I personally believe that ticketing and music, events and music rather, leave aside ticketing, events and music, they will Web3 will revolutionize, these two components. I think music are already Sugnesh and many other similar startups are, targeting the music industry, and it makes sense, right? Um, Now we are in the events side. My other co-founder has a solid events background. He made the first cloud ticketing platform. He had 11 screens in India. Then he exited to PVR, which is like the biggest chain equivalent of AMC in India. So so that's the and what we are doing is like, and this is how I'll explain the general audience first what we are doing, and this is how I explained to my dad, because he never, being that generation, they never. If I am not able to sell it to him, what I'm doing, there's no point I can sell it to. So they're like, hey, dad, so this is how the conversation goes. Ki, Arey, book my show. This book my show is doing it. Platinum list. How you're different, right? And even your audience will have the same thing. Why are you taking them head on? So my simple answer to my dad and people who ask me is that, till now, tickets are meant to be looked at as a utility value. Nobody stores ticket, right? They are meant to be discarded, right? After use. Now, this proposition was okay till our parents' generation. But me and the team Blocktickets generally believe that tickets offers much, much more than just the utility value. So we are making tickets fun, cool with an OG factor, right? How? So just from a normal perspective, a new logo is shown, a new brand sponsor's logo on the ticket is shown every 24 hours. A new artist announcement is shown on the NFT ticket itself, right? So we have made these tickets interactive. That's number A. Number B, along with tickets. Now, tickets only sells part of the problem. And of course, we offer the utility that whenever the tickets are sold in the secondary market, the royalty gets inbuilt to the event organizer. He likes to like that. Now, second is something called reveal NFTs that we sell. Now, they are particularly synchronized for events industry, right? So the biggest event that happened in 2022 was Oscars, where enraged Will Smith walks up and slaps comedian Chris, right? Now that clip has gotten 100 million views. And guess what? Who owns that? Oscar doesn't own it. A news channel, NBC, is making money off it right now, right? One of our press conference, now we wanted to say, hey, what if I, along with the tickets, say that, hey, your NFT, your reveal NFT is sold along with the ticket. Now, whatever happens in the event, good, bad, or ugly, we will upload that and then share it with the event organizers. And we will also make them earn by putting it on YouTube and making so we are giving the NFT owners not just a collectible, he'll now get a chance to monetize his views on YouTube. So it's as I said, Web 2, Web 3 combined, एक बीच का रास्ता है where, they are monetizing it. One of our press conferences, he's a big South Indian actor, you know him, Sudip Kitcha from Bangalore, the second only to Yash. So our press conference clip where he, politely corrects my co-founder. It's not Kannada, it's Kannada. That clip has gotten 500,000 views. 500,000 views. That sort of cult following he has, and Kannadigas, thing. So we did incoming. Of course, that's not a reveal NFT because now it has been revealed. But the point is, every event, if we could do it, and this is spontaneous, we didn't plan it, right? This is spontaneous. Like if we make those NFTs as reveal NFTs, bundle it with tickets and sell it, it gives revenue enhancement to event organizers. So this is what, in essence, Blocktickets is. We have done, I think, a good, our first event happened in Metaverse. It was a world's first wholly on Metaverse. Tata Tea, PepsiCo, they joined hands. It was a social cause. We airdropped, along with the tickets, we airdropped their brand NFTs. Then in June, we started doing physical events in India. In Parvati Valley was like our first techno DJ festival, in Bombay, in Bangalore. Then this. So in India, we only sell tickets and we actually pay GST on them, and we only take money via fiat, right? Not crypto, because the legal. We went to one of the producers in Bombay, and उसने एक मतलब, we were in the say, hey, we launch our token, we'll take money in crypto. So we're one of the biggest actors in India. We met his manager. He said, get me a legal opinion. This is how we became grounded. Get me a legal opinion that, okay, sir will do it, but get him a legal opinion from a reputed lawyer that what you're doing is legal. So no ENY, no nothing. We'll give them in writing that you can sell goods and services in any country in exchange of crypto. So we figured it out that no, we need a proper payment gateway. We have to sell our goods and services in fiat, provide a GST in India, in Dubai. We have entertained that VAT, and then only we can grow. Then only big event I'm not talking about mom and pop sort of event organizer, house parties and all, but any meaningful concerts that we do. Our last concert was of Sonu Nigam, the biggest India artist. So that's how we have scaled it. That we provide, we only take money in fiat, and we are registered in the locality. So for all our UAE events, we service from UAE company. All the India events we service from India company. And it's a proper blood and sweat business also. So selling NFT is easy because you have no liability. Now here, if an artist cancels, we have for every 50 tickets we sell, we have a customer support on telephone, on email, right? Mm-hmm. We have a ground staff, right? So we are liable if our first concert, any artist cancels, we refunded full tickets. Right.
There's a couple of things that I find very interesting about your project and how you're going about making it, right? First, goes back to something I brought up in the very beginning of today's episode, right? That paradox of that physical digital paradox that I was talking about. So as you can see, I was only seeing tickets and then saying, hey, they should be part of like memorabilia. And they can possibly be like, that can be done by making them digital and turning them into NFTs. Now, obviously, since you're putting every single day into it, you figured out that once something goes digital, one additional advantage is composability comes in, and additional layers of utility, let's call it, or say features, let's call it, right, can be brought in. So that's very fascinating to me in that an electronic ticket. So right now, obviously, anyway, people are not buying paper tickets, right? But there's server-based pieces of data right now that are basically static and kind of dying after that. But making them dynamic, making them something of a relationship between artist and fan. That's very interesting. Point A, right? Point B, I loved that you mentioned music. So if I'm not sure how familiar you are with the first episode or not, but it was called Music plus Web3. So I'm very, very bullish on that side of it as well. And there's a lot of underlying reason as to why I'm structuring this course this way. Entertainment obviously a lot more spread out and a lot more complex conversation to have, and that's why I've brought these two very, very different companies together, right? But with that being said, another bit that I found very interesting was being compliance first and taking payments in fiat and meeting these people, whether they're actors or they're event organizers or they're a PVR, say, meeting them where they're at in terms of regulation to begin with, to kind of bootstrap that growth story for the project off the bat. Now, this may not be for every protocol, obviously, and we all stand on a spectrum here, but I do understand that this has a place, and especially at this time, will help you as a business to grow leaps and bounds. So any more insights on that as to how do you think this transitions? Do you think it stays a fiat world forever? Are you a BTC maxi? Or do you see yourself as kind of bridging this transition, which is very important and very difficult to do, actually?
So, that's a very good question. Thanks for bringing it up. So, we think of, I'm not in this debate of Web3, Web2. These are terminologies. For me, there are two things. Consumer, right? If I can sell something, my right to exist is that if I can sell something cooler, even if it's expensive and a little bit more inefficient than the existing centralized cloud platforms, I'm in for it, right? So So that now like we did the world's first NFT premiere in Dubai for this movie Vikrant Rana. And me and my co-founder, of course, he has a cult following in Karnataka, and all this Karnataka association in Dubai, UAE supported us, right? Like the KGF, which was a biggest grossing Kannada film prior to Vikrant Rana. For that, we pulled out the data. 30,000 Kannada tickets was sold in Dubai for KGF. Then we reached out to all these, Kannada associations in UAE, and we were selling these NFT memberships. So the highest membership was 10 lakhs. You get to meet the actor, click a picture, and of course access to the premiere and four future other premieres. The lowest one was 10,000. Of course, a couple can enter with the popcorn and get to see the premiere. So we really had to explain, and I really came from it gave us a shock. Nobody, like we like to live in a bubble that Web3 is, but no, generally we literally had to walk and explain people what are NFTs, whether it's Khalij Times, these Kannada associations or the buyer, they will want to know, can you explain to me what is the benefit over regular ticket? What is NFT? We did a lot of our effort went on educating the masses, and still not there. And I will say still not there.
Of course.
The early data that we are seeing is that 90% of the people that buy our tickets, they buy it thinking it's tickets, and only 10% will sell it in the secondary market. In the secondary market, right? Of course, we have not done any sporting league events which have that, the secondary market sale. Concerts are by default have lesser resale value than sporting. But that's the early data that is coming in, and
So you're dropping some hints about where you're moving in the future, huh? That's really, that's really interesting. I agree with you, man. Education for our space definitely is an ever-going climb, I think. And this course is sort of like one way for me to add some value, hopefully, and that's why I teamed up with an organization such as Headstart, because they're just the most trusted, So yeah, I think we're a long ways from that, but I'm so glad that you came on board, because some very interesting pieces came up. Like another thing that I just realized right now, right, is if everything ticketing related became on chain, then on chain analysis is a lot stronger than closed box pieces of information that people are keeping from each other, right? So just how YouTube kind of opened up analytics for video viewing, that could probably be done for events via all of tickets becoming NFTs slowly. So it is, again, it's that physical digital paradox, dude. Like when things go to the digital realm, they generally open up a lot of opportunity. And here, when we start talking about this information being sort of on a public ledger, right, that adds layers of opportunity over it, because now suddenly you have a global talent pool that can do things with that information and the technology, So thanks so much for joining. I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to kind of just share my screen here. It's nothing. So every time, this is what we do. The slide is going to explain it. It's just a banter session, okay? We don't like to do Q&As. We just like to do kind of banter. So for example, I know Sugnesh was very interesting. I know Nishant was very interesting. Anything you guys find in common or opposed to each other, want to discuss, want to have banter, let's look at the questions. We'll just chat about that stuff. I'll start with another question that was there for Nftyplay. Does Nftyplay use DSO under hood? So that's a pretty straightforward question for Sugnesh.
Not really. DSO is its own blockchain, I believe, and they're running their own infra, and we are operating on Polygon and multi-chain actually. So right now we're on Polygon extended to Ethereum and then Binance Smart Chain. So that's a focus. Eventually we could run it under the hood, but the idea would be to be the front end layer of all these backend applications.
Right.
DSO actually is decentralized social, but like it sits on its own blockchain, and they don't focus on NFTs. We want to focus on NFTs and minting of your own profiles and the content within it. So that's a
got you. I love it. I think that kind of difference of focus is what our space needs. the entire, there was this question in the WhatsApp Web3 community earlier in the morning, and I don't recall exactly what the space, but it was about music still, because that was the first episode that was out, right? And one of the things I found myself saying was, how about looking at it as what is the space missing right now, and how can I fix that, instead of saying, here's this technology I have, how do I use this to, So I think that's where it's like the problem you're solving for is just different. I think, it's more about value capture for the people who are creating the content, so it's always good to see different kinds of projects going at the same problem from different angles. Another question, this one's for Nishant and Blocktickets. So Nishant, who owns these clips? I understand you created the NFTs, but what about the underlying video clip? There you go.
It is a very, very complicated question. So like in our last event of Sonu Nigam on 10th September in Coca-Cola Arena, Dubai, the agreement was that the IP of the whatever happens on stage, and Sonu Nigam cried on stage because he did a concert almost 2 years after first concert after COVID, right? Again, that clip that will release soon may just go viral. So he said that whatever I do on stage will be IP is will be with artist Sonu Nigam. Of course, when we sell the reveal NFTs, with his permission, he will give the usage of that IP to the NFT buyers. But
there'll be a royalty piece.
All the other concerts that we have done is that the event organizer owns the content of whatever happens on the stage. With BCCI, with the cricketing world, it's different because we had a detailed discussion. They said whenever the player enters the bus from the hotel to whenever the match and whenever he enters back to his hotel, that IP is mine, not even the team owner's IP. That is by the BCCI and not even team owners. So you can only sell whatever happens in the hotel room, not even whatever happened in the bus. So that just tied our hands, okay, So that just tied our hands. So every league, and same with NFL, it's different. Like these rules are different. We are learning, but yeah.
I was just thinking, you must have such interesting stories, dude. I mean, it's one thing. So I think another kind of macro lesson I'm taking from having this conversation with you, is that sometimes we get so ideologically bound to this thing called technology, which will free us from everything, right? But we forget just how entrenched systems can really be. And to dive into real business situations where there's a lot of contracts at play and a bunch of other factors are involved, and to get into those trenches and actually try and make change happen, even when it's such an obvious value add, is a difficult thing to be doing, man. Much respect to you. Any comments that Sugnesh you have? Any other thing you think we missed talking about entertainment plus Web3? Now would be the time.
I really believe that a lot of these like contracts that we just discussed about would eventually end up being on chain. As complex as they are, they could either go on a private ledger or a public ledger. Does not really matter.
Right.
But when they actually operate on chain, the transparency is going to increase. And a lot of communication gap is just going to go away, whether Nishant just gave an example that, there are certain things you could do on bus and not outside of the bus. Who is specifying this where, and how do you even read in between the lines? I believe AI actually goes to the level where the contracts are so smart that they could actually adapt to the situations or how they're being drawn in the on-chain ecosystems, and then users are going to be able to leverage these at a very, very faster level where you could just select things from drop downs basically on the licensing platform, and then you can license X, Y, and Z on a decentralized mechanism, whether you are a consumer or someone who wants to license out your stuff in a short-term manner or extended period of time and make passive income out of it. So for example, you have a Bored Ape or a Mona Lisa. You don't want to sell it, but you just want to give rights to a commercial company to use it for 30 days. You give options for users to select the contract on your own term, and they could choose it on the other side of how they want to leverage the license that you have just posted.
Yeah.
That becomes the next move in where we are going with Web3, and that's my kind of take on where.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I absolutely agree. Actually, I think just contracts in general, or let's say conflict resolution, and specifically licensing as well, right? These are some things that. So on the very, very macro, let's say that one bit of Web3 or really blockchain is about reducing human error in certain things, in important things, right? And this is one of those classic, I think it's a classical example almost to where automation would almost certainly help, because there's a lot of gray area, and reducing the space of that gray area when it comes to contracts and when it comes to whether these are corporate contracts or whether these are interhuman contracts, regardless of the situation, I think that's definitely a thesis I would be very, very behind.
And sorry to put you off, but when this happens, entertainment becomes very simple in terms of restricting one another from using content here and there. It just becomes completely autonomous.
Right.
That's where I see entertainment going maybe in 5 years from now. Yeah. Correct.
Nishant, what do you think? 5 years or 50 years, or what do you think?
No, so I think people generally who are less than 45, what the data that I'm getting is, the early adopters are people that are less than 45 years of age that are experimenting with NFTs and buying entertainment NFTs, right? So if I just focus, I'm excluding the rest of the category, just focusing on 45 years and below, which is what we target, in our events industry. We know that this is the age profile he's most likely to buy the NFT. Right. So in that category, max to max, I would say, we will see an early adoption. We'll see a good number, healthy numbers in 3 years, 2025.
Wow. Awesome, man. That's optimistic.
Yeah,
and that's it's optimistic in the middle of a bear market, dude. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Another thing, I'll tell you why. Another thing that is helping us and even Sugnesh is the symbiotic relationship. Now that Facebook, Insta have allowed the users to post the NFTs and even Twitter on their profile pictures, right? So gone are the days where people like Abu Dhabi. We were speaking to Abu Dhabi Grand. They said gone are the days where people will just click a picture and post it on the Insta. Now the next thing is we will take NFT from the Abu Dhabi F1 and post it as a profile picture. Right, because that's an elevated status, an elevated sort of a thing than just posting. So this is helping. This will,
for sure.
The entire symbiotic relationship, Facebook coming in, and more entire the ecosystem growing. So we also get catapulted.
I love it, man. Honestly, at this point in the conversation, we have reached, thank God, exactly where I had wanted us to come in bringing the two of you together in this conversation, which was the macro vision of the gradual decentralization of everything digital, but achieved through this, like you said, symbiotic relationship between current business models, adding value right away in an undeniable manner, and I think we're all building towards a better future, however cheesy and vague that sounds, but I thank both of you so much for your time and everybody that joined. I take away from this that Web3 is not really in a bubble as such, in the sense that real business is adopting it, and it is adopting to real business as well. And it's step by step, and it happens slowly, and then all of a sudden, right? So I think 5 years later, the ideological macro people will suddenly be, hey, we're here, but it'll have happened because of people and projects that are really trying to bridge that gap on a daily basis. And so appreciate both of you joining, as well as every single person who came in to watch. Hope you had a good time. We'll meet again next week for episode 3. Thank you so much for being here.